Rosa Parks and the Bust of Freedom, Chapter 2. Rosa Parks' story really begins much earlier in American history, at the time of the Civil War in the 1860s. The main cause of the American Civil War was a dispute between the North and South over slavery. The economy, the way of making and managing money, of the Southern states was based on slavery. The South had many large plantations that needed cheap workers, in other words, slaves. Without slaves, the entire Southern economy would fall apart. But it wasn't only money that the South was fighting for. Many white Southerners, even those who didn't own slaves, and most didn't, were angry that the United States government should meddle in their way of life. They had grown up believing that slavery was right. They even believed that God approved of slavery. When some people said that slaves must be freed, those Southerners were as outraged as if someone had taken away their homes. In 1865, when the Civil War ended, slavery became illegal. But the change in law did not change people's hearts. Many white Southerners were not ready to treat black people as equals. Angry and bitter, they looked for ways to keep blacks down. Organizations like the Ku Klux Klan became popular. The Klan, or KKK, is a terrorist group that promotes white power. Klan members wearing white robes and masks rode through the countryside on horses, threatening black Americans. Sometimes they claimed to be the ghosts of Southern soldiers who had died in the Civil War. They burned black homes and businesses. They tortured and killed people in order to keep the black community frightened. Racists also used what were called Jim Crow laws to keep black people down and deprive them of their basic human dignity. Jim Crow laws touched on almost every part of everyday life and firmly established segregation, separation of the races, as a way of life in the South for many years to come. This policy of segregation applied to public schools, public places and transportation, restaurants, and drinking fountains. Even public bathrooms had signs reading "Whites Only" and "Colored Only." A black person attempting to enter a whites only area would take a tremendous risk. He could be arrested, beaten, or worse. In addition to affecting the day-to-day life of blacks, Jim Crow laws also made it almost impossible for blacks to exercise their right to vote. For one thing, offices where blacks could register to vote were rarely open. Their hours were not advertised. When an office was open and a number of people lined up to register, the office would suddenly close. Also, blacks had to pass a test and pay a tax in order to register. But the tests were scored by white people who never told the blacks why they had supposedly failed. On those tests, blacks were required to answer questions that were sometimes ridiculous, such as, "How many bubbles are there in a bar of soap?" Other times, the questions were impossibly difficult, such as, "Recite the entire U.S. Constitution." As a little girl in Pine Level, Rosa probably didn't know much about the Civil War or the reasons behind the Jim Crow laws, but she knew about the Ku Klux Klan. After all, her grandfather Sylvester was known as an uppity black man who refused to bow down to whites. He and grandmother Rose were the only black people in Pine Level who owned land. One of Rose's first memories was of her grandfather sitting on a front porch all night, holding his shotgun in case the Klan came by. Many nights, little Rosa would sit up with him. She said later that if there was going to be any shooting, she wanted to see it. There was a reason the Klan was especially nervous when Rosa was a little girl. World War I was ending, and black American soldiers were coming home from fighting in Europe. The soldiers had served bravely. In Europe, they had been greeted as heroes and shown respect by white people. Now, back in their own country, those same men were being treated as second-class citizens. They could not eat in white restaurants. They could not stay in white hotels. They had to drink from colored water fountains. They could be workers, but never bosses. They weren't allowed to buy homes in white neighborhoods. Their children had to attend second-rate black schools. White people, even white children, called them boy and even more insulting names. Older black people were used to being treated this way. Many of them had the attitude, "That's just the way things are." But it was different for these young soldiers. They had experienced another kind of life, one in which they weren't judged by the color of their skin. They wanted that kind of life in their own communities. They began speaking out. Stories in black newspapers demanded better treatment for blacks. More and more people joined civil rights organizations, especially the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. As Southern blacks spoke up for themselves, Southern whites became more angry. The most vicious whites carried out horrible attacks called lynchings, in which they tortured black people to death and hung their bodies from trees. In Pine Level, as in many towns, Rosa and her classmates brought their books home from school every day. They were afraid the Klan would burn the school during the night. This was the atmosphere that Rosa grew up in. Thank you.